I believe you could have a few questions after a previous lesson where I showed you the smart blur and surface blur, and you could ask, well, there is not much practice use of this. And right now I'm going to show you how you can use this tool for different tasks, for task of sharpening, because right now I want to go into the sharpening option and show you a really fantastic method how you can sharpen images actually using blur. I know it sounds like an abstract, maybe it sounds like an abstract, I'm not sure, but that's the truth, that's what we're going to do. So as remember, we want to work non-destructively. I'm going to duplicate this layer twice, and I choose this image because we have really some of the nice details, and maybe we want to improve some of the details on the skin, maybe a little bit on the beard. So I'm going to show you how to do this in a very easy way and having the full control on it. So I'm going to rename this into 1 and 2. And these two layers I'm going to put into the group. It's not something complicated, but groups are something like our layers, but we're going to keep this in a folder. So select these two, then hit Ctrl or Command and G, and it becomes into our group. It's this little folder, and we can do most of the things with the group as we do with the layers, but we just keep everything in the one folder. So that's a small difference. And I'm going to call this Sharpen. So what I'm going to do, you can hit this arrow to open this, and as you can see, these two layers exist in this folder. So blending mode for this folder, I'm going to change into overlay. So it's getting contrastic now, crazy contrastic, and that's for sure something we don't want. And this number 2, I'm going to change into vivid light. That's a very basic technique to sharpen. Some of you might really like this because it gives you just a bit more control than just sharpening tools, which we're going to talk about very soon. And on this second number, I'm just going to invert the layer. So Control, Command, and I. And what you got right now, you get into our previous result. There is no difference, and the reason is because actually this group contains the same information as this layer right now by the fact we play with blending modes, so they covered each other, and that's giving us the previous result. But anyway, on this layer right now, I want to bring up some of the sharpening. I'm going to start with just blur and Gaussian blur at first. And what you can see, it's bringing the details everywhere. So that's the basic option. If you want to bring up the details, you can just play with the blur. And what you can notice, you can bring as much sharpening as you want. I think it's one of the easiest method you could actually find. So it brings up just sharpening everywhere. The great thing is, let's hit OK right now. And bring this not too strong. Okay, so it looks like that right now, before and after. If you think it's too strong, you can always change opacity, and also on this group you can create layer mask and use a brush with color black to remove the sharpening from the areas you don't want. However, I think the better use of this method is, let's go back right now. Okay, we are back to our previous result when we use surface blur. Let's go to filter, blur, and surface blur, because that's what we are talking about, and that's which possibilities you're going to give you. You see, when you're going to use just a Gaussian blur or others, it might give you really fake halo effect. I don't really like this. But when you use surface blur, remember that it's going to prevent the edges. What does it mean? You're not going to affect these areas over here, so it's not going to give you this halo effect, but it's going to give you really nice effect. And also, when you're going to play with radius, when you're going to pull this up, it's going to be stronger. Same, let's see, when you pull up the threshold, it's going to be stronger, but it's going to break down the edges. So why I'm not using Gaussian blur? Because I have full control on the edges as well as on the blur. So I'm setting threshold to prevent the edges, to keep them as I really want. And also I can set up the radius to set up the sharpen I want to add to this image. When I set this all up, I can hit OK. It's going to take a while, of course. Okay, it's done. And before and after. By this simple step, we got really nice sharpening. And what's the most important, we have full control on every detail on the image. It's not just we hit sharpen and it's not sharpening image, but we can set up exactly the amount of sharpening we really want. So as you can see, your blur options, the blending modes, and everything you learned till now has much more possibilities, give you much more possibilities than you might think at first when you start in your adventure with Photoshop.